Hello, and welcome to Based on Facts, where fiction and superstition meet logic and scientific facts on WELT 95.7 FM, broadcasting from the Allen County Public Library. Today I have with me Freya, who's going to be joining me, Chris Rex, and we are going to be talking about some of the anti-abortion laws and regulations lately that have been kind of trying to impede upon the rights of women and their, as of yet, unborn child. And so one of those particular laws here in Indiana is HB1337. Okay, that is a House bill that was actually passed a few months ago, I believe, and actually passed 60 votes to 40, which is a little surprising for me. But it was still, the majority vote. The issue with this bill, if I could just read some of the bill here, it's basically preventing doctors from performing an abortion on a woman who is trying to get an abortion solely because of race, color, national origin, ancestry, sex, or Down syndrome or other disabilities. So it's essentially saying that many of the reasons that women may use to get an abortion are now null and void, at least here in Indiana. Apparently a similar bill was passed in North Dakota as well. And so it kind of begs the question as to why we're going through all this effort just to try and tell a woman what she can do with her own body and what is not even developed into a full-grown person that can act and be independent from the mother yet. So we're kind of using this as a great extension from one of my previous episodes on how a fetus is really can be classified as a parasite in many regards because it's just relying on the mother for support. And so now we're kind of taking it to the next step and looking at almost the ethical or moral obligations that we have to respect what a woman does with her own body in respect to her own parasite, so to speak. So I brought Freya along on this show because she's expressed some interest in this topic and because she's actually done some work along the lines of this kind of stuff. So I guess go ahead and give your opinion on this topic.
All right. I guess as far as work that I've been associated with, I'm a former volunteer for Planned Parenthood. So that probably outs me as on one side or the other, but I don't think you need to have sides in this argument necessarily or at all. Just if you think about what we're actually talking about is a law that was passed years ago. Roe v. Wade made abortions legal, so they are legal and they have been legal ever since. And so laws like HB 1337 are they have a word for it, and it's called a trap law. It's a targeted regulation against abortion providers. And so these laws are designed specifically to make abortions hard to procure even though they're legal. And so they're trying to circumvent the law with other laws. And as far as opinions go, I think that's wrong.
And I always find that interesting when you have such court cases and such that establish this precedent for something. And so we think everything is fine and dandy until people other certain nefarious factors come into the equation and start trying to change certain paradigms, so to speak. And on some cases that can certainly be a great thing, but in other cases it seems to be almost meddling in affairs that shouldn't be meddled with. So I guess it's just kind of my outlook on the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's a woman's body. It is her fetus that's growing inside her. Yes, it took more than just her to make it, but there's one body involved in letting it grow. And so, I mean, that's the only person who should be deciding what's going on in there. And I guess one of the things that they try to pass off as justifying these laws, like this one, is the safety of the pregnant woman. And so they're just looking out for her as, trying to protect her body from herself and her own actions, because she doesn't know any better than the medical professionals who have been legally providing these abortions for several years. And I guess politicians have a better sense of what's healthier for a woman than her doctor.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of these politicians are experts in a number of fields. It's very surprising to see them give such strong opinions, especially when their facts that they use to back up such things are limited to, I just feel that it's wrong. I don't feel like that's actually a qualification or a substitute for expertise in a particular field. So
when they say, well, I'm not a scientist, but, or I'm not a medical professional, but I think this is how we do this now. And it all boils down to their own interpretation of whatever religious literature they're choosing to follow. Or making up, but I don't want to get too far into just opinions, but so like the ideas that this law are based on are just absurd. Like, they are based on things that don't necessarily happen, or if they do, it's really not a thing that should be legislated. I guess if I start with one thing, the idea that we have to tell women in Indiana that they can't abort a fetus based on its sex. When was the last time you heard of someone having an abortion because they didn't want to have a baby girl in Indiana? I mean,
it sounds more like a European thing, maybe, with the monarchy, and the king needs a son as his heir, and she is currently pregnant with a daughter, and so she needs to abort that child because it's not a son. So clearly that happens in Indiana right now.
all the time, and.
Now, to be fair, my sister did just have her 4th daughter in a row. Okay, so she's still working for that son, so maybe it would have been a good idea for her to abort that one because of sex. But, I digress.
Some people just don't see the humor in that.
Yeah. We're terrible, cruel people for making fun of such things, but
yeah. So, and again, the just butchering this law, like basing your now, okay, you can't have a baby based on its race or ethnicity. I think you probably would have thought about that before you made the baby with the person that you couldn't handle having a child made out of that DNA.
Right.
I don't understand.
If you don't want a Chinese child, don't have sex with a Chinese person. It's really not rocket science.
Yeah. And then the idea that you can no longer have a baby have an abortion based on the disability of the fetus as well is just ridiculous, because it's discrimination. It is discrimination against the special needs community, and I don't understand that logic. If you feel that having a child with a disability, even if it's Down syndrome, if you feel that it's right to have an abortion, then you should be able to have an abortion based on that. If you feel like you can raise a child and give it a good quality of life, and you can provide for that child with everything that goes along with that, then fine, have the baby. No one is telling you that you have to abort it. You have that decision, or you used to have that decision. I believe it's after July 1st this year, so it's coming up in less than a month that this law may take action.
No, that's very interesting. Just from what I was thinking of, and what I teach in my classes, just because of the fact that when you look at when women decide to have children, you typically see some sort of cutoff point, to where they're like, well, maybe it's not the best thing to have children after you're 40. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what's the number one reason for that?
Is it the risk of having a baby with a disability?
It is. That's exactly
Right.
right. So that's why it's astounding to me to see this law be passed, to where the number one reason why women don't have children when they're older and yet still fertile is because of a disability. So it kind of blows my mind that they would include that in this particular bill, because that's just counterintuitive in every way.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the chances, I believe the chances of a woman that was like 45 years old of having a baby with Down syndrome, if I remember correctly, is about 8 to 10%, which is pretty high of a percent. And that's easily at least 10 times the percentage of a normal, young, healthy woman having a child with a disability like that. So, you know, if every 1 in 10 babies could have a Down syndrome kid at that age, it's probably not the best thing to try to reproduce at that age, because that's actually a pretty respectable percentage.
Yeah. And it's more risky to the mother overall, and generally you're already raising a family at that point. Women often decide at that age to abort because they've already done the baby raising. They don't want to do more, or they have teenagers and they don't want to have another baby. That's just logical. Like, they've already gone through it, and sometimes it's a financial thing, and they're thinking of the quality of life for the other kids. Like, why are you going to legislate that now that woman has to have a child when she's already raising children, and wants to provide for them the best way possible, and then now it's a special needs child and she cannot abort it, and that is going to impact the family differently, and it's a whole can of worms that should be left in the hands of that woman and her doctor.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. I see this dynamic between what the woman wants and what society or politicians or economists tend to want, which is to say, a lot of politicians and a lot of economists like more people joining the populace, so they will do certain measures to encourage the population. Now, in the same stroke, they will gripe about how many people they have to support through federal funding methods or state funding methods. And so when you see these two different moods or attitudes, you see almost a contradiction involved, to where you're wanting to encourage life as much as possible, but if that life is like a disabled person that is going to require government funding, and really, we can even just talk about the non-disabled kids and say that a lot of families receive governmental support to support their children. And so you're seeing a child that's going to need support, but in the same token, you're seeing these politicians and economists say, well, we need more children to generate more money. And it's like, well, it takes a long time to get to that point, apparently. And in some cases, it may never get to that point in the case of a severely disabled child.
And the other, the fact that we care so much about these pregnancies, these fetuses growing inside of a woman until it comes out on its own. naturally. Like if you don't have an abortion or you don't miscarriage, actually they don't want to cover you if you have a miscarriage, because if, you know, Medicare or any kind of government funded insurance needs to pay for that, they're not going to be okay with that. But by God, you better not have an abortion, and they're not going to help you pay for that. They're also not going to pay for your birth control either, and or promote any kind of sexual education. So not only do they not want you to have an abortion, they don't want to tell you how to not get pregnant.
Right.
Like, and then they're not going to care about it once it's out. So, yeah, this is a whole nother just spew of...
Catch-22 kind of situation, yeah.
It's yeah. So, what else about that law? All right. So, now, if you do have an abortion, you can no longer donate that tissue to science, and that you're now, by the same HB1337, obligated to either bury or cremate those remains. So even if your child dies, and as morbid as that sounds, you can donate that child to science and like possibly save another life, or organ donation, but you cannot donate fetal tissue anymore because that's evil, apparently.
No, it's really frustrating to me, being a scientist and a professor, just because you're seeing this giant opportunity for progress, especially as a state. Like Indiana in general is really considered one of the manufacturing capitals of the U.S. We derive a lot of our economy around manufacturing type of jobs, factory jobs and such. And you know what? That's great. But we're also trying to encourage diversification, especially in the modern landscape, and trying to get that science and education to kind of catch up to where our manufacturing is. And so it's frustrating to see this tactic being used by politicians and such to further minimize our potential science growth by saying that we can't use fetal tissue here in Indiana. That's just crazy to me, because, I mean, even when looking at some of the things you would see on the media, maybe like South Park and such, they talked about the advantages of stem cells. And stem cells just are literally that they're magical. They're magical things, and we can literally do just about anything with them. When you remove that ability of us to use them, that's where you really start, you know, trying to squander essentially all of our resources away from scientific progress, from healing or treating the human condition in ways that are purely natural, essentially, in favor of all this synthetic stuff, which certainly can be effective, but that's a whole nother discussion entirely. But the thing is that it's really sad to see Indiana put that kind of chokehold on the sciences by doing this and trying to limit where these cells or these tissues can go once the mother decides she wants nothing more to do with it. I mean, honestly, I would think if it's her tissue in the first place, she can decide whatever she wants to do with it. I mean, before or after, you know, it's severed from her, so to speak, and so it's very, very frustrating to see that.
Yeah. And I mean, that is legal too, or it was, or will be legal up until the beginning of July in Indiana, presumably. And this goes back to all of those undercover videos that those people were trying to do sting operations on Planned Parenthood, trying to catch them in the act of doing illegal things with fetal tissue. And every single state that has wasted taxpayer dollars investigating Planned Parenthood has come up with nothing. They have not found anything illegal. Every single state that has done that, and they're using taxpayer money to do that. Like, it's ridiculous, and they all looked, and they're all looking, and in Indiana it came up zilch, like no wrongdoing, and yet they still managed to win by getting these trap laws passed. And it's really disgusting, like just the terror. This is what I like to call domestic terrorism, because they are just targeting specific individuals and just making their lives horrible. And
yeah, because isn't there a lot of shaming involved for some of the people that go to Planned Parenthood?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
aren't there picketers and?
Oh yeah, I actually have a good story about that.
Okay.
Well, in addition, I have driven through protesters when I used to volunteer.
Jeez.
And going in as a volunteer, they are right at the gate, and that's fine. They are yelling into your car that you're a whore and that you're gonna burn in hell and come to Jesus, and like a lot of interesting stuff. I was going in to volunteer in the volunteer services department and do paperwork, but I'm a whore and going to hell. So there was that. But also, I was told that, I mean, those protesters are out there day in, day out some days. Some clinics only provide abortions on certain days. The protesters get word of when those days are, and then that's when they're out there. The clinic that I volunteered at said that they actually had to call Child Protective Services on one of the protesters' families a couple times because it was like 100 degrees outside and they were protesting and their children were out in the sun and with no protection. They had their like less than 10-year-olds out in the sunshine and just no shade, no like, and they ended up, calling law enforcement on these people who were there to protect the unborn.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so not only do they not care about their people's kids, but after they come out of the vagina, they don't care about their own.
The irony of it all,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it's just, and then the violence that comes after that, and the threats, and just everything that surrounds this. It's like, why is there so much violence and harm surrounding something if that's what you're trying to stop? Like,
Well, it's all about peace and love and encouraging life. But if you don't want to encourage life, well, then we'll beat you.
Yeah, right.
With sticks and clubs.
Exactly. Bombs and guns,
right.
And just, oh my goodness.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you volunteered. What kind of work did you do as a part of your volunteer work?
Oh, I looked through volunteer applicants and called them up and got them in for interviews, and I was really mostly a paperwork jockey.
Oh, okay.
I was in administration, so I mean, and it helped with outreach and educational events. I wasn't technically in education, but we did a lot of tabletops at festivals and outreach in that way.
Nice.
And so a few times I went to help with that, hand out condoms, God forbid, and play games, and just sexual education. I think one of my favorite times was tabling at the local Pride Festival, because, even though you're probably not going to get your partner pregnant, you still need protection.
This is a true story. Yes. So what other types of events or festivals that those sorts of things do?
Anything that any kind of local, like farmers market or various just town festivals. I mean, Pride was a big one, but I guess anywhere that they'd let them table. It was just kind of a outreach event, outreach education opportunity, and so and Planned Parenthood does a lot of education. No, this isn't just the Planned Parenthood talk, but I mean they're in the news a lot, and usually what gets these laws passed because they're the target.
Right.
But yeah, so it was a very positive experience working there. Really good community within the building. I mean, those people care a lot about human life and quality of life, and that's why anybody who goes to work for Planned Parenthood does, because they care. They're trying to help the world be better, and whether that's through sexual education or giving pap smears, affordable female and male health. I mean, it's a ridiculously small percentage of what Planned Parenthood does as abortions. It's just not that many, because there aren't that many that occur in the country every year.
Millions of babies aborted every minute.
Yes,
It's like, no,
yes.
not quite. Not exactly what we call a major issue.
Yeah. So yeah.
So did you have a lot of hostile encounters there? Like as far as people actually coming up to you and calling you out and threatening harm or whatever? Or?
I didn't, because of the days I volunteered. When I went, I typically didn't have to drive through the protesters, which was a plus, because I was usually riding my bicycle over there. So I never had to. I did drive my car when I knew I'd have to drive through protesters. They do have a non-engagement policy, which is also good because that keeps the protesters quieter. So they did ask that all volunteers and staff not say anything back. So just try not to acknowledge them, because that's what they want. And they're
just ignore them entirely, essentially.
Because we're there to do a job and help people, and not encourage the riffraff. I don't know. Whatever.
So that's that's a factor I didn't necessarily know, actually, because I just now realized I would not be able to do that.
It was hard. It was hard. Oh my god. You're just like 10 and 2 and eyes forward. Just like, please stop yelling at me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's almost encouraging, like those uptight guards that you'd see in like Britain or something, that aren't allowed to react to anything. You're like, dude, you are the bravest person I know.
You're just making yourself a target.
Right. Jeez, that's crazy. Huh.
Yeah.
That's I guess that must be part of why you don't see a whole lot of that then, or at least hear so much about that, as far as see obnoxious people who are working or volunteering for places like that, like Planned Parenthood. You don't see a whole lot of radical examples of them behaving or saying things on YouTube and such. If they have some sort of policy that kind of helps mitigate that a little bit.
I mean, you can say what you want on your own terms, but if you're speaking for Planned Parenthood, then you need to just stick to the facts and not engage someone who's just trying to fight you. Because I can't say when the last time a person who believed that abortion was absolutely wrong had a conversation with me, as opposed to telling me that I was a bad person and I should feel bad and other things that I probably shouldn't say on your show.
Yeah, so that's part of the thing that really frustrates me, is when you see situations like that and people want to have an interaction that is entirely one-sided and is completely them talking at you, not really requiring any response from you other than hoping that you'll get angry back.
Yeah.
And that's really just an inflammatory kind of way to approach an interaction between two people. It really doesn't foster discussion, an intelligent discussion of any kind at that point. You really just end up with two people shouting at each other based on their emotions, and you're really not getting anywhere.
Right.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And, like, the thing is that the pro-choice side is really following up, like, with the truth, like what we know. Like, it's not, some of it, okay, is opinion, definitely, because it's like, what do you think is right and wrong? So there's that. And then you get into the fact that a lot of the pro-life stuff is flat out lies often. Like, okay, so again, with these track laws similar to HB1337, requiring that abortion clinics have admitting privileges. So your abortion provider has to be able to send you to the hospital when something bad happens. And there's a reason they don't have that. They don't need to have that. And it's because the risk of having an abortion is so low that, like, that's not necessary. You don't have to have an emergency clinic set up to provide abortions. And also, the laws in this country say that if you're having an emergency, you go to the emergency room. They're not going to turn you away. Like, this is just, that's lies that law is based on, or those laws that are closing clinics down, because it's ill-founded. It's not based on anything real.
Now, I was thinking before that I'd heard of some of these situations where somebody goes to the ER or something, and they're having complications, and they want to do an abortion, but the doctor is strongly religious and he refuses to do it. Is that something that's common? Have you heard of things like that?
I have not.
Okay.
I think that's illegal. I don't think, because as a doctor, you're required to help. Like, or are you saying that?
Because I mean, I was just thinking, I've heard cases where doctors have some sort of maybe a religious belief, or maybe just a strong moral opinion, and they say that because of those feelings or beliefs of theirs, that they simply can't do certain procedures in certain circumstances.
I did read an article a while back. This woman, her abortion experience was kind of like that. She had all full intentions of having the baby that she was pregnant with. She wanted to have the child, and then she started to have complications. And I don't want to say too much because I haven't read it in a while, but essentially she started out at a kind of hospital where they wouldn't do the abortion, but luckily the complications were such that her life wasn't in danger, so she was able to go to a different hospital that would help her. But where she started, they wouldn't. I don't know if there are any legal repercussions, though. I feel like, I mean, there's, the religious freedom protections all over this country now, so presumably you could probably let a woman die if she needed help in that situation now.
And that's kind of one of my problems with some of these anti-abortion or pro-life kinds of situations, where it really comes down to a question of whose life are you pro for? Because in some cases it's much more dangerous for the mother to have that child than it is for her to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, you'd mentioned a figure earlier.
Yeah, it is 11 times more dangerous to have a baby, to give birth. So childbirth is 11 times more dangerous than having an abortion in the first 20 weeks of gestation. So after that, it ramps up to being the same. that's the same risk of having an abortion and having a baby after 20 weeks. So, yeah, those female safety laws definitely are doing a lot to protect us.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So why I guess that kind of comes down to maybe procedures of abortions at those different life stages of the fetus. So what are some of the different things that they do to actually have an abortion for the mother?
Okay, so a lot of abortions are done by taking pills, which is taking pills. So they are trying to regulate that to some extent, but I can come back to that. So that's the safest, essentially, procedural, because it's not a procedure, it's just taking pills that cause an abortion, cause you to, have a miscarriage. And then they also do something called aspiration, which is, I think, trumpeted a lot as horrifying, but all it is, the other word for it is vacuum aspiration. It is kind of exactly what it sounds like. You do insert an apparatus into into your cervix. I don't want to get the exact procedure wrong here, but essentially you're vacuuming the tissue out of the uterus, and then there is another one, and I'm gonna mess it up. It's dilation and, oh my goodness.
Extraction.
Yeah, extraction, yeah, which is, again, it's very similar. It's like what it sounds like. They do, they dilate your cervix and then extract the tissue. It's similar to kind of a DNC, which is a dilation and, oh my goodness, I'm totally drawing a blank on the word.
Cesarean?
No, it's no cutting, it's just dilation. It's essentially emptying your uterus, cleaning it out. And a lot of times after you have a miscarriage, they'll have to do this too, because not everything comes out. And so a DNC is what it's short for, but it's a standard procedure to, decrease the risks to your body of leaving that stuff in you.
Yeah.
Risks associated with abortions are, they include infections, possibly, as any invasive procedure might, and sometimes bleeding if you don't heal completely after the procedure. None of these really have anything to do with the pill unless you have to have a day afterwards. So you could have an allergic reaction. All of the risks associated with abortion are also associated with childbirth and a lot of other medical procedures. So there's nothing actually different or new about an abortion compared to anything else.
So you're basically saying that's either safer or it's as dangerous as. It's never more dangerous. Essentially is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably something like, getting mole removed, maybe.
Right.
But just general risks involved. I mean, and it is safer than having a baby in the first part of it. So, I mean, that's just statistically what it is.
So going back to that, what kinds of do you happen to know what kinds of things they put in those pills? Like, is it basically a morning after pill, just in a really high dose, or like?
It's different. I would have to look it up again.
Okay.
But it isn't. Plan B, the morning after pill, is different. So that
Okay.
I do like that you brought that up. A lot of people think that Plan B is an abortion pill, and it's not.
Okay.
So Plan B is kind of a trumped up hormone pill that makes you have shed your egg quickly. And so that's not an abortion. That is just forcing your body to get rid of the egg that, you don't want to get impregnated with. And so, yeah, it's different, but I don't remember what the exact chemical combo in the abortion pill is.
No, I guess I was just curious because I would assume that they would be different, just because preventing the implantation of the egg into the endometrium of the uterus is probably different than what you have to do to get that fetus to remove itself from the placenta in the first place. So after it implants into the uterus. So
and I believe the abortion pill is a 2-pill process. As also, Plan B is too, the morning after pill, but again, they're different. Really, one of the things that a lot of the TRAP laws is doing to the pill, even the abortion pill, is to require women to be present in the clinic to take the pill, and this impacts the woman in the fact that, like, often if she has to travel far distances, and then she has to wait there after she takes the pill, and they turn it into this whole procedure that wastes a lot of time and is unnecessary, and it's really targeting poor people. And I know we were talking a little bit about that, but not quite the same topic. But if you can imagine having to travel for hours, and you're 18 and you don't have a car and you are pregnant and you don't want to be, chances are your choices are limited. And it's just ridiculous that the way these laws are put together.
Yeah, and they actually brought up a good point. I also saw this in this article. They actually mentioned that only 4 of the 92 counties in Indiana are able to perform an abortion. So it's kind of interesting when you look at that dynamic. Just thinking that, oh my gosh, there's definitely going to be a substantial amount of traveling involved for a lot of people in this particular circumstance, and you're going to make it even more difficult for them once they get there after this giant journey. That's very frustrating, just hearing about it, and me being a manly man that I am, she laughs. But I'm never going to experience being pregnant or having to deal with childbirth, but I feel that I can still comment on this topic from the perspective that I don't see it being terribly fair to women that are already going through so much hard work and effort just to try to have this abortion because they feel that it's the best. Best for them, best for their family, best for everyone all around. And it's very frustrating to see a number of other people kind of chiming in on this situation that really should just be between the woman and her body and her family. And it's disappointing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in addition to that distance, I kind of mentioned the first waiting periods. Are you familiar with those?
See, I've briefly heard about those, but I guess I don't know too much about it.
So in a lot of instances where they've passed these laws, women who want an abortion or seeking an abortion, barring the fact that it's a normal pregnancy or they don't know if anything's wrong and they can get through all of the other craziness that they have to pass through. After they go to the clinic, they are forced often a 24-hour waiting period or so, or it depends on where you are, how long, but they send you away and you have to think about it. So let's say you just drove several hours, and then you have to wait a day, so you're gonna have to get a room and then go back to the clinic, and just the whole idea of that is, do you not think that she's thought about what she's seeking on her way there, or just at all? I mean, and again, this is another thing, another place where they flat out lie. In certain states, doctors are required to tell a woman that there is a risk of breast cancer associated with an abortion. I am not joking. They have to, and there is no evidence of this at all. That is a lie.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and especially in the South, I think, Southeast, cool places, where they have forced waiting periods, and then the doctors are required, even though the doctors know it's false. They have to. There you can say, though, that it is a load of crap, but they have to say it, otherwise there are legal repercussions for the doctors.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother bag of worms, because I'm sitting here struggling as a professor of biology and anatomy and physiology. I'm struggling to try to understand how estrogen or something as a result of childbirth or not of childbirth could possibly influence breast cancer, and I don't know. I'm gonna have to look up that one. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I really didn't think there was any particular preservation of breast cells, mammary glands after having a child, but I don't know. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But I can definitely see the other point. I would, man, I get angry if I have to wait even 30 minutes for something that I want. If I'm trying to get into a restaurant, one of my favorites is Red Lobster, and if they have to sit there and be like, well, we want to give you 24 hours to think about whether you want to really eat that lobster. So just come back in a day and then we'll see how you feel then.
Yeah,
This is like, dude, I would want to rip into that tank and take that lobster home with me anyway. I don't care.
Yeah. And so forced waiting periods, and then often in a lot of these laws, they force women to have to get an ultrasound, so they have to have that done.
Okay, if they're going to force them to do that, are they paying for it?
That I don't know. I assume that the woman probably has to pay for that. It's probably included in that cost.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but
being forced to do something that you have to pay for anyway. That's interesting. Continue.
Yeah. But just in some of the states, they've said, well, she doesn't have to look at the screen, but they have to perform the ultrasound of the fetus that she doesn't want to have, and it's also totally medically unnecessary.
I say that it really seems like a direct attempt to try to shame the mother into having the kid.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, they make you jump through a lot of hoops to just have a legal, safe medical procedure that should be your choice to have.
I almost see the next step being let's start printing out those ultrasounds onto little portraits to put on your keychain.
You have to carry that.
Right, that you have to carry that.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be the 3D ones. Too.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can have this weird 3-dimensional lump that you have to carry around.
Yeah, well, we'll just have a 3D printer on site, print your fetus that you're aborting, that way you can take it home with you.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a serious issue, but it's also not. If people could just be more accepting of others' choices and being okay with the fact that that person chose an abortion, but maybe that person didn't. You don't have to talk to the person who had an abortion. you can go talk to the person who had the baby, or like whatever. But why do you have to control them and pass laws based on lies?
Well, that's a good point. I know that just to give you guys a little bit of background, we have slightly different diets. Your diet is what's your...
I am a ovo-lacto vegetarian,
Okay.
so I don't eat anything dead, like that was a living animal, or however you want to put it. I just don't. I should stop eating cheese and eggs. I understand the hypocrisy in that often, but for the most part, I just eat plants.
But I guess I bring that up because that's another great example to where it's like, well, you know what, I really think that you need to have meat in your diet, so we're just going to mandate that every breakfast you're going to have a few slices of bacon or a few sausage links just to give you that meat that you really need in your diet. Not that it's going to affect my life at all, but just because I feel like meddling in your life, I'm going to force you to have that for breakfast.
Well, God, what if I became pregnant and I deprived that growing fetus of those nutrients?
Oh,
you know, I am a woman of reproductive age.
You know what? That's a great point. Let's start passing legislation now to mandate that everybody that has kids has to eat meat. That way they bring up their little fetus the right way, in the way of meat.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine the alternative if somebody was like, you can't have bacon anymore? That's illegal.
Right.
There would be blood in the streets.
Yeah, there would. It wouldn't be pig's blood from making more bacon. You almost resort to human bacon at that point. That's terrible.
Well, the people passing these laws would probably be okay with that if it was, the ones that were born already.
Right.
As long as it's not in the woman's womb, you can't have that, but you can eat the babies.
Yeah. Fetal bacon, no dice. Toddler bacon is all right.
Yeah.
Go for that one.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that's a great analogy right there.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh my god.
So I guess where we go from here, I guess, is kind of the important question, as far as if you think that there is enough momentum behind this kind of movement towards I want to say equality. Equality and recognizing that the woman really should have the say in this matter. Do you think there's enough momentum behind that to start trying to quash such bills before they can do too much damage, I guess?
Well, they've already started doing damage, but I think if we start voting with our brains, and I think we can turn some things around. They're not going to repeal Roe v. Wade. That's law. I know they talk about it, but they can't. They can, but they won't. I don't think they will. Yeah. So that's a starting point. I know Planned Parenthood has filed suit against HB 1337, and yet to be determined whether, as of today, this recording, whether that's going to halt the bill from taking action. We need to not vote for the kind of person that would sign bills like that into law. I think we can turn things around once a few of these bills start to be determined to cause an undue stress or burden on women, then they'll start to disappear, but we can never stop being vigilant. Personhood. Oh my goodness. Personhood laws. They keep trying with those in certain states, and they keep failing, but if that gets passed, that's a whole nother thing. If you fall down the stairs after a personhood law, if you're pregnant and you fall down the stairs, you just committed murder if you have a miscarriage. There are so many. So we need to just pay attention and not let these happen. So we just that's all we can do. I think we can do it, but I think we just all need to pay attention.
And that's kind of interesting that you bring up that last little point about personhood, because of how much this whole toddler death thing has been really televised lately in a bunch of different media outlets and such, just because we're seeing these situations where there appears to be some degree of negligence on the behalf of the parent. Not to say that we're asserting that, but there seems to be something fishy going on in some of these circumstances where these toddlers put themselves in dangerous situations that they really shouldn't be able to do if the parents were actually paying attention. So whether we're talking about the toddler that fell down into the gorilla enclosure, or like here in town where we've had two toddlers being backed over by vehicles. I think one was 2 years old and the other was 1 year old. Just in the Fort Wayne area, and that's crazy to hear about. It's like, how do you back over a toddler? That's crazy to me. Who was watching the toddler? Where was the toddler at, or what was doing? And so that starts to beg the question, well, should we be trying to press charges of negligence against the parents? And yet you're bringing up these laws that are like, well, that would classify as negligence if a pregnant mother falls downstairs, even though certainly she didn't intend to fall down those stairs. So if we start to look at how that kind of seems ridiculous, but yet how it also kind of seems ridiculous that in certain circumstances there was clear negligence on the parents' behalf, and that a death resulted from it of a child or a toddler. It almost seems like two completely opposite situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, it's really, and this is probably more opinion, but it's about control. It is, if you can control somebody's life, make them have a baby that they don't want, it's just asserting dominance more than anything. And then, you know, there's enough already existent laws that say, well, accidents happen, babies get run over, and like, you know, well, it's legal to have an abortion, it's illegal to run over a child. Like,
right.
It's just, I think, yeah, you're right. There's something weird and backwards
There are
here.
definitely a few interesting things going on there. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for coming on the show. Once again, my name is Chris. This is Freya. And if you're ever interested in pulling up any of our episodes online, you can certainly find them on Facebook and on YouTube just by searching for Based on Facts. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.